So, welcome everybody, yes, to another episode in this series of the It Starts With You podcast, all around relationships. And my guest today is somebody I feel so honored to have you on my podcast because I met this wonderful lady a few weeks ago in a bookstore in Brighton. And somebody had not long told me about this lady as well and said, "Oh, you need to get the book, The Bridge." And I was like, "Oh, okay, what's that?" And I didn't know about it. And they said, "Oh, you need to listen to Fearne Cotton's podcast as well." So anyway, it turns out that I then bumped into this woman, a bookshop in Brighton. Her name is Donna Lancaster, and I'm very, very happy to have you here today. Nice to meet you, Donna, again.
Nice to see you again, Sam. Thanks for inviting me.
No, thank you for coming on. I really, really appreciate it.
No worries.
Now sort of a lot of pennies have dropped for me and connected a few dots about who you are, what you do. And I've been aware of you, but didn't have as much knowledge as I now do after having met you. I've gone away and I've bought your book and I've started to dip into your book, which is super powerful, by the way. And so I've got a better understanding of you and your work. But what I would love you to do, because I'll probably do a really crap job of it, is introduce yourself, who you are and what you do for the listeners.
Oh, gold. I always find that bit the hardest. So, yeah, I mean, I'm a writer and I'm also a coach and a group facilitator. So I've been working therapeutically one way or another with people for 32 years. 32 years, blimey. And I've had a very rich sort of diverse range of work experiences. So originally I was a social worker, and then I worked in women's refuges, in prisons, and I've worked in various other social work capacities, child protection, a whole range of things. I won't bore you, otherwise that's the podcast. That's how long I've been about. But but then eventually I trained in something called the Hoffman process, which is in the personal development field is pretty well known, and I taught that for the best part of 10 years. And then myself and another Hoffman facilitator, Gabby Kruger, we decided to set up our own retreat. And so we established and co-founded the Bridge Retreat. And the Bridge Retreat was a 6-day personal development program. So it was residential. People came there to process whatever was holding them back in their life. It gets associated with grief, but it's actually any emotional blocks, any emotional pain, any kind of, we used to get a lot of people with depression, anxiety, and just that sense of, is this it,
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, unfortunately, we did that for 5 years. It was very successful. And then unfortunately, COVID hit. And, we're a small business, and that was a big knock for us. We tried to take it online, not quite as rewarding as doing it in person. And so then around about that time, I was also approached about writing a book which kind of encapsulates what the Bridge was about. And here we are. So we have the Bridge book.
Which is amazing and incredible. I'm not all the way through it yet. I'm not going to lie, because I'll show you. You'll probably understand why I'm not all the way through it, because this is what I do to books.
Yeah.
Underlining, I'm writing the margins.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm a highlighter girl myself, proper old school.
Yeah, I think books need to be really used. So I turn down the pages and scribble. I know some people are quite precious, but I'm not. So there's been a lot of underlining and a lot of scribbling. So that tells you probably everything you need to know. And you probably know this already because it's got rave reviews. And I know Fearne Cotton obviously has been raving about it. And I know you've done some mentoring for Fearne and stuff like that. So your pedigree is like unbelievable. It's incredible. So this is probably one of the reasons I feel really privileged to have you on here. I know you've featured in many magazines, and I know that the retreat, did your retreat win some awards? Or I know it was very highly regarded, wasn't it, the Bridge?
Yeah, it didn't win any awards. I don't even know if there are awards for retreats, but it was very well thought of. And yeah, we did, we had a documentary made about the Bridge Retreat, which was called Loved. And yeah, so I think people really, there was a need that we filled, and we really wanted to offer something, Gabby and I, that was really loving and spacious and nurturing for people that had childhood wounding, basically. So yeah, that's why I think so many people, it really was that, you know, a retreat is exactly that. It's retreating, it's stepping back from your everyday life. And we really created a sort of safe space for people to do that for that period of time. But obviously, even without the pandemic, many people can't afford, Sam, to spend that kind of money or have that kind of access to that 6-day residential experience, because it's not cheap. So this book was another way of offering the experience to people, but in a way that's, you know, £15 or whatever it is to buy a book these days.
Absolutely, yeah. On that point, obviously talking about retreating and people, and is this it? I kind of get that. I get a lot of my clients that come with that. They're like, is this it? They're looking for the clarity. They're looking for what's next, what's coming, what's ahead of me. And a lot of what I found over the years is it all comes down to relationships. Ultimately, two things I found that are prevalent in all the work that I've done always come up is relationships and money. Now, that might not be right for every coach, but that is what I've noticed, a very strong pattern in the work that I've been doing. Now, I wouldn't say that I'm a relationship coach, but we've had, myself and the client have had to navigate our way through this. And this is why I felt like strongly that I should do this series and try and speak to people, coaches and people like yourself, therapists who have worked in that world of self-development, personal development, just to have some open conversations and dialogues around why is that? What is it about relationships, and where does that all start? Like, you know, this podcast is called It Starts With You. It's kind of runs through the thread of everything I do. And for me, ultimately, it is, you know, we want to have a loving relationship. We want to have good familial relationships. We all want that soulmate, that person. But I feel like unless we are doing this work of self and we're working on that relationship, our own personal relationship with ourselves, the man that looks back at us in the mirror, how can any of that improve? So I'm really interested to just hear your thoughts around that, and like how we do improve better relationships. Does it start with us? Do you, you know, go along with that narrative?
Yeah, I mean, it starts with our family system, that's for sure. So I don't think it's just necessarily it's like that you're carrying in your lineage, you're carrying all the kind of unhealed wounding, as well as all the wonderful qualities and gifts from your ancestors. And so, you know, on a very simplistic level, if you just look back one generation to your parents and how they did or didn't do healthy relating, you know, it's not rocket science. It's like if you grew up in an environment, as I did, where there was a lot of dysfunction, and I watched, you know, my mom and my dad behave in really unhealthy ways, and there was a lot of violence and addiction and drama and all of that. It's like that's the first model, Sam, of relationship, because my dad was the first man I ever met. My mum was the first woman. So that's going to be my template for relating. And I might grow up and go, oh, I'm not going to do it like that, which is what a lot of people do. They look at their parents and go, geez, I'm not going to go down that route. And and that's a really lovely aspiration. But if you don't heal the wounding that's been created by living for years potentially in that dysfunctional environment, you're just rebelling. It's like, I always say, it's like pulling against your history on an elastic band. So you're trying so hard to be different, so hard to relate in healthier ways, but it's exhausting because you've always got that elastic band attaching you to your dysfunctional history. And in moments of weakness or tiredness, or when there's kids involved and you're just really completely wiped out, ping, back you go. And suddenly you hear your father's words coming out of your mouth, or your mother's behaviors, and you're like, not the apples doesn't fall so far from the tree after all.
Yeah, that's so true. It's my sister's always saying that the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. And that, you know, I got goosebumps when you started talking about that, and lineage and ancestry and all of that. And of course, we carry all of that with us. And that's something that is really, I'm really just starting that journey of trying to understand all of that, because I always think that the answers lie within us, but it's the unpicking of that, isn't it? Who's going to help us unpick that? Because it's, you know, like me just being a coach, I have my own coach. I know that I need support. I need someone to help me unpick stuff for myself. But but doing that real deep work of self, how can we do, I know, how could we possibly do that alone, without support and help, and dealing with, like, say, childhood traumas and wounds and stuff like that? Where do we start? Where does someone start with that? If someone comes to you and they're like, look, the relationships in my life are all, pretty difficult, maybe slightly dysfunctional. I can't find the romantic partner I want. I feel like, is this it for me? Is this what I'm destined for in the future? No real good, great, healthy relationships. Where would they start? Where would you take someone? Where would you suggest someone begins with that?
I mean, the first thing is, like you said, is the key fundamental piece is the relationship you have with yourself. And so that does relate to our history. That does relate to childhood stuff, whether people like it or not. It does, it's like all roads lead to childhood.
Yeah.
And anything that happens to you later generally is just so impactful because of the insecure attachments that you established as a child. So, sometimes people say to me, oh, I was fine until I was bullied at school when I was 15. And it's like, there's already been research done around the type of character that gets bullied in the first place and where that stems from. And that's not about apportioning blame. It's just like there's an opening, there's a vulnerability in certain people where from childhood. So I think the relationship with yourself is the starting point, and it starts with awareness, because I think, when I was in my sort of like angry late teens, early 20s, it was all about the others. It was my dad's fault, it was my mum's fault, it was everybody else's fault. And I would have, I always say, same issue, different face in relationships. I was like, different guy would come along, hey, he's a bastard, da, da, da. It was I never had the awareness at that stage, because I was too angry and hurt, actually, to really recognize that there's a common denominator here, Donna, and so it took me a while, as it does most of us, which I think is, the compassion piece is, it's called being human, is it takes you a while and a bit of suffering, and then you start to sort of get a little bit more aware. And I got to a point where I can't remember my age, where I just started to notice that there was a certain type of partner that I was attracted to, and it's not rocket science, they were addicts, they started off being very charming and funny and great kind of company, very intelligent, all my dad. And then the addiction started to really come through, and that was the dysfunction of my dad. So I was basically going out with versions of my dad without realizing it for some years. And that was the awareness piece, where I started to kind of wake up and go, okay, maybe there's some reason that I'm choosing these partners. It's not just fate. I don't just walk into a bar and suddenly the addict in the room goes, oh, I'll have her. I think the same. There's something trying to happen here, and that is also, Sam, the beauty, as I believe, about these things, is actually what's trying to happen is healing.
Right.
Unfortunately, we are not taught how to heal through relationships, how to heal ourselves. And so what we end up doing is re-traumatizing and re-wounding ourselves rather than the healing that's trying to happen. But to answer your question, the starting point is the awareness piece, is actually starting to wake up and say, okay, maybe I need to actually do something differently, and also to learn about relationships. It's like if all you learned was what happened in your family home, and that wasn't very healthy, then it's not going to be a surprise if you then can't function in adult relationships.
Absolutely. And I mean, I went through a really difficult breakup a few years ago, and honestly, that it absolutely, I didn't see it coming, to be honest with you. It devastated me, and I've been in good, healthy relationships, I would like to say, most of my life. My first partner, long time, we've got 2 kids, all amicable, still speak, all lovely. But this one, it absolutely floored me. Like, I never expected to feel that level of pain at my age. When you think you get to a certain point in your life, I think, got my shit together. I'm kind of, I'm a coach, it's working well, and then you just get I was absolutely floored by it. And it took me a while, and I knew that I had to take accountability and responsibility. I knew that, but I knew that I just couldn't do it by myself. I was in such a dark hole that there was no way that I was unpicking this by myself. And I went and got some therapy, and it was amazing and wonderful and really helped me work through that. But what I learned through therapy was that actually, although I felt all this pain and I attributed it to this person, actually it wasn't that person. It was all of the rejection and the lack of love that I felt as a child. That was the stuff that came up for me. But in the first instance, I couldn't see it. I didn't see it. And it was only the therapy that helped me see that. I mean, it's not necessarily a question in there. It's just a level of, like, I think we're always doing this work.
Yeah, totally.
Sometimes it catches us off guard.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, I have a more, if you like, transpersonal view, beyond the personal, where I see that as, this is something that's meant to happen, that we're meant to go through periods where that, like you described, where the rug gets pulled out from under you, and you it's those moments where you think, oh yeah, I've got this life stuff blown up, and then suddenly the universe goes, oh, have you, Sam? Like this. So I don't, in that sense, I don't take it personal, because I think we all have our rug pulled out from us at various points in our lives, and I think it's necessary for our growth and our healing, and to wake up, basically. So and I think we're always learning and growing. I certainly hope so. I think stagnation is a form of death. So for me, it's sometimes people go, so my clients will say to me, oh, I've got to work on this, and it's like, I don't see it like that. I just see it as I want to continue to grow into the best version of myself as I am now, in my 50s, and then in my 60s, and then, God willing, as long as I'm here. So I just want to keep growing and learning and understanding the human condition more and more.
And it's having that willingness, isn't it, to the growth mindset we talk about, but the willingness to be open to new ideas and to challenge yourself, which of course is uncomfortable, and we don't want uncomfortable. We want to go back into our little comfort zone, and it will be hunky-dory and feel smooth and nice. But of course, that's not where the growth happens, and the improvement. I mean, I'm very much like you. I want to improve this experience on this planet every day that I'm here, and get the best out of me. And for me, that's, I've had to open up. I've had to be willing and to do the hard stuff and hear the hard words and have the hard conversations. But it's not that easy for everybody, and I recognize that it's a real challenge.
Yeah.
One thing I just wanted to move on to is like around self-love, because I think in the world we live in today is a very self-love maybe has been, and self-care, it's gone a bit awry, I think, in my book. What we think that might be. There's a lot of talk about self-care and self-love, and maybe a lot of people view that as a bit of pampering and stuff like that. And I know in your book there's a whole chapter around self-love and self-care. What for you, I guess, what does that mean for you, self-love and self-care, and how can we do that to a great degree in order to help us have a better relationship with ourselves?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, Sam. And I think, first of all, what I'd say is I agree, self-love has been kind of hijacked and kind of, distorted, and then people think it relates to navel gazing and narcissism, and like this kind of individualistic, self-obsessed, like, oh, I'm working on myself and I'm working on my self-love, and for me it's the opposite of that. It's the absolute opposite of that. It's the least self-obsessed, the least narcissistic, the least kind of navel-gazy process you will ever go through. Because when you truly fall back in love with yourself, and by the way, when you think about little children, which we all were once, little children are completely in love with themselves, and rightly so. My grandson looks in the mirror and he's just like, and he says, I mean, it's in the book, like I say, be more Theo. And Theo looks in the mirror and he's like naked, little pot belly. And he's just like, and he says to himself, he goes, oh, I love you. Like this.
Oh, so cute.
It's so good, because, and we look at little children and we go, oh, isn't that wonderful that they've got such self-worth? And then we ridicule adults when adults say, I love myself, I really do, because we associate it with egotism, egoistic qualities and self-obsession. But like I say, it's the least narcissistic and self-obsessed, because when you truly fall back in love with yourself, it means that you're not interested in the kind of the wounds of the past, because when you've healed those, it's like clearing the debris from your own soul, and that's when you create so much lightness inside that you kind of look up and you're like, how can I love and serve more in the world? Because when you're really in love with yourself, when you really truly love yourself, you've created the space where all those gaping wounds were like leaking out pain all over people and hurting others, hurting yourself. You've created the space when you've healed that to be able to then look up and actually pay attention to other people and actually be in service in the world and to love in the world. So for me, self-love is such an important, powerful part of the healing process. And it means you just sort of get out of your own way. You stop going, like, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but like me, I was like, Daddy didn't love me. My mum didn't treat me as she should. She wasn't there. She didn't protect me. All of that was valid, but it kept me in the place of a powerless victim. When it happened, Sam, I was a powerless victim because I was a child. But when you're still spouting that, when you're 20, 30, 40, 50 years old, still blaming your parents for what happened to you as a child, and you haven't, if you've had access to the resources and the therapy, then that's a really self-obsessed place to live. That's when what I write in the book about woundology, which is over-identification with our wounds. So some people, their very identity is built around their story, their negative story. And I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in true self-love, saying, it's like that thing when they say, oh, she loves herself. I always go, yeah, I do actually. it's trying to be like a dismissive, British don't get above your station nonsense. And actually what I'm talking about is a fullness. We need people to feel full and whole so that they can love and serve in the world. And self-care, just to finish that piece, when you ask about self-care, there's daily self-care and there's radical self-care, and daily self-care is the kind of ways that you can obviously talk about, space for rest and hot baths with rose petals in and all that. Nice. But I'm really interested in things like boundaries. Like self-care is about holding your boundaries, even if it makes your bum clench. It's about saying, actually, saying no when you mean no. Self-care is about being truthful and living in truth, So self-care for me is those day-to-day moments when we behave in ways that are considering ourselves as much as we would consider a friend, for example. And that's the same with self-love, is that you treat yourself and you care about yourself as much as you would, your best friend or a partner. It's saying I'm worth considering here.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I love so much about what you said. And boundaries are a massive thing, comes up in my world a lot. Boundaries and being truthful. And I always, not always, but I sometimes say to my clients, it's like learning to ask yourself what you need and then giving it to yourself, like as if you're talking to your best friend, because you would go to your best friend and say, what do you need? How can I support you? What is it you need? And they will probably tell you, but we're not very good at doing that for ourselves, like truly connecting with ourselves, trying to be, deeply intuitive with ourselves and really just try and understand what it is that we need, and then allowing ourselves to go there and to have that, or to get that for ourselves. And I don't mean a slice of bread or whatever, do you know what I mean, or a bit of food. I mean, deeply nurturing ourselves and connecting with ourselves. And one of the things for me that's massively helped me with that is learning to do breath work. I became a breathwork teacher last year after doing like a 5-day program for myself. And it just really helps me connect better on a deeper level into my intuition. And what's come off the back of that is me being able to connect with myself and ask myself what I need. And then going, yeah, do you know what? Actually, I'm going to give this to myself, whether that's going to therapy or, I need to do, a week's worth of yoga and connect back deeper into my meditations or whatever. But, it's just allowing myself to have those things. That for me is more about how I see self-care for me personally right now.
Yeah, and it's that thing. It's really hard to offer that love, that level of love and self-care to yourself when you don't think you deserve it. And so many people that, which comes back to the childhood wounding, so many people are wounded in a way that they feel that they don't deserve to be treated as well as they would treat a partner or a friend, for
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
Or their own child. And so that's part of the healing process, as I say, is you need to look back and go backwards briefly. You don't need to live there, but you need to go backwards in order to move forwards. And
Yeah.
so we go backwards in terms of looking at what happened to me to create that feeling that I don't deserve the same tenderness, love, care, and respect that I offer the people that I love. Why don't I get to have that? What happened to me to create that feeling that I'm unworthy, unlovable, or undeserving? And then you go back, and I always say it's like going back for, if there was a 5-year-old version of you that was, as it was for me, that was kind of 4 or 5, when I realized that not only that I didn't feel lovable, but that my parents weren't capable. Even at that young age, I knew that it wasn't in them, and even so young, I could sense that it's like, I believed it was my fault, because we do when we're that age, but it was like, I could see that it just wasn't in them. And so I had to go back for that little 4 or 5-year-old Donna, and kind of and grieve for the fact that she wasn't loved in that way, and that she didn't have her needs met. And then when I did that, and when I was able to kind of grieve for that part of me, it's like taking that part of me by the hand and saying, I've got you, wise woman Donna, 55-year-old Donna, I've got you now, and I'm going to take care of you. And of course, it feels clumsy and strange when you first say to that version of yourself, your kind of wounded child, as I call it, what do you need? Like you said, what do you need in this moment? Maybe it's just a duvet day, or maybe it's watch a film and have a bit of a giggle with your friends or whatever. And it feels alien at first to kind of love yourself in that way, because you're not used to it.
Yeah.
And it's like anything. It's like when you first start learning to drive or playing the piano, it's practice. And you just do it again and again and again. And then it becomes the new way of being. It takes
Yeah.
practice.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like all of this stuff, doesn't it? It takes
Yeah.
practice, and we think I know sometimes we think we buy a book or we do a course and we think, yeah, I'm gonna be fine after this, and it's all gonna flip.
Good luck.
No, no, no. If only it was that easy. I've got a gazillion books.
Yeah.
It's funny you talking about the 5 year. I have this picture and I keep it as a picture of me as a little kid.
Oh, sweet.
And I always keep, it's obviously right next to me because I've just grabbed it, and I just always keep it by my side and very close by, just to remind myself that's who I'm dealing with and that's who I'm talking to. And sometimes when I feel a little bit fragile or whatever, I take myself by the hand, like you said, and just have a little conversation, and it really works for me. It really, really does. So it's interesting that you touched on that, about being that kind of it. I think I was younger there, but yeah, taking ourselves by the hand sometimes. And
Absolutely. And it's one of the things that I say in the book is that, one of the rituals I encourage people to do is to get a photo like that, and then to have it like just exactly as you've done, Sam, but also have a copy of it, which you take with you in your bag or in your pocket. So say like you're going, I don't know, swimming, or you're going to do something nice for yourself, get a cup of tea and a cake or whatever it is, a little treat, and you take that 5-year-old version of yourself through the picture, and you pop her in your bag or in your pocket, and it's like you consciously say, I'm taking that version of me out for a tea and cake, or out for a swim, or whatever it might be. Yeah. And so it's like recognizing, because there's a 5-year-old in all of us.
yeah,
It's like the brilliant writer Anne Lamott, she says something like, I am every age I've ever been. And it's true. I am every age I've ever been. So it means that, like I always say to people, I'm 5 and I'm 55,
Yeah.
And so the kind of healing part is that we move from a childish 5-year-old, which is I was childish in my 5-year-old self, because I was hurting. And when I healed that part, I became childlike in my 5-year-old self,
I've
So
read that book. I'm sure I have.
Yeah,
Childish
yeah,
and
it is in
yeah.
the book. Yeah. So you're moving from childish to childlike. And so that's why now I can say I have a beautiful childlike 5-year-old. You know, I'm really playful
Yeah.
and very young in many ways. And I mean in a childlike way, but I haven't got all that reactivity that I used to have, and like, you know, basically having 5-year-old tantrums in a sort of 25-year-old body. It wasn't fair.
Yeah. Yeah, so
And
much
that's healing.
nicer.
Yeah.
Oh, that totally resonates with me, childish and childlike, and definitely recommend to anybody to get the book. But I remember reading about that in there, and that really kind of hit. I'm very playful and childlike. I hope no one says I'm childish, but I don't know, but maybe. But I do feel, yeah, I'm childlike, and I like play. But my father was very much like that. He had a really great sense of humor. So
Nice.
I'm like my
Gift
dad.
from your dad.
Yes, definitely. I'm conscious of time, but I just wanted to touch on the book a little bit. And yeah, maybe I guess, would you have written the book if you'd not been asked to write it? I know obviously you were asked to write the book. Was there ever a thought in your mind that you would like, maybe I could put this in a book or do it some other, I know you tried to do it online, the retreat, but would you
You know,
think you would have written a book otherwise?
no is the honest answer. So it's funny because, you know, people often people say I would love to write a book, and I feel, let's be clear here, I feel really grateful that I got a book deal with Penguin Life, and I've got a second book coming out, and they want me to do a third. I feel very, very grateful for that. But in the spirit of authenticity and honesty, my book agent, she pursued me like a dog. She was so tenacious. She even had a baby, and I kept saying no. So she met me, and I was like, no. And then she's like, you need to write a book. I'm like, no, I'm too busy. Go away. And then, you know, and then she went off. She had a baby. Then she came back a year later, and she's like, you need to write a book.
Wow, okay. Did she
And
do your
so
retreat or something? What was
I
it?
don't.
Did she do your retreat? Had she experienced it?
No, she hadn't. She just heard of it, and she
Right.
had seen me, I think, interviewed, and just got a sense of what I was about. And I really am so glad. Her name's Valeria Huerta, and I'm so glad and grateful to her, because she really did sort of not give up on it. And it just worked out that when the pandemic happened, you know, because I kept saying I'm too busy, and then she was like, no one's going anywhere. So and it was true. And so I could write this book. And now I look back and I think, you know, because I see myself as an elder now, leaning into eldership at this stage in my life. And one of the things about an elder is that you've turned your wounds into wisdom. So
Yeah.
lots of people just get old, they don't get wiser. So an
Yeah.
elder gets both older and wiser, and they make a commitment to share some of what they've learned with the people that are following in their footsteps.
Mm.
And so for me, that is the bridge book, and my other book that's coming out in March, which is Wise Words for Women. It's like, these are my eldership piece of saying, I've been through all this shit. I've done all this healing work, and here's in a nutshell some of the things that worked for me and hundreds of people that I've worked with. And maybe something in there is useful for other people. So it's an eldership piece for me of passing on wisdom.
Wow, that's incredible. Oh, I look forward to the second book. So, why did you say Wise Words for Women? Did you say?
Yeah, so it's Wise Words for Women. So it's basically it's a gift book, and it's one of those kind of dip in for a quote of the day to inspire you. So it's really sort of small, short pieces of writing, many of which I've already shared because I was testing the waters of them on Instagram, on my Instagram account. So I kind of see which ones resonate with most people that I write, and then we put them together in a book, and that's being published under Fearne Cotton's Happy Place Books.
Oh, is it? Oh,
Yeah. So
okay.
that will be out on the 2nd of March in time for International Women's Day. In fact, Sam, just to say, I'm planning to do, where we met, a Frory Books in Brighton. I'm planning to do a workshop called Healing Through Relationships round about the time that my book comes out. So hopefully you'll come along to that.
I will definitely come
Some
along.
of your listeners, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. I would definitely come along. I love International Women's Day, and I've done a couple of talks around that time as well. So yeah, it's always a time of year that I look forward to. The last few years, it's especially have been really good. Even with the pandemic, we did something online when that was going on for International Women's Day. But yes, I definitely will come to that 100%. I'll put it in my diary now. And what about the third book? Could you say, could you?
No, I mean, it's an ongoing discussion. I'm very keen to. I'm writing my memoirs,
Okay.
but I don't think that's what my book agent wants my third book to be. So no, it might be around. I'm also very interested in writing a book around ritual because I really believe in the healing power of rituals, and just rituals away from the association with religion. So really offering different beautiful rituals involving nature and community, and just being able to bring those in at times when we're struggling, because I've collected and created so many beautiful rituals over the years, and my grandchildren love rituals, and they love like just something as simple as when their feelings have some difficult feelings that they're trying to process, and you kind of take them to the beach and you pick up a pebble and you say, this is my anger, and then you throw it into the sea. That's a ritual. And so it's just doing really creative rituals to offer people to do by themselves or in community or even with their children. So yeah, watch this space.
No, definitely. I love the sound of that. I like rituals and things like that. I keep a stone in my pocket, in my coat pocket, and it just sits there. And sometimes I don't wear the coat for a while, and then I'll wear it. But every time it's my gratitude stone. And when I touch it and I put it in my pocket, it reminds me to be grateful. And then I list off a load of things, mentally journal in my head about what I'm grateful for. And that's a little ritual for me.
Yeah.
It's just little things like that, isn't it? So
yeah.
that sounds like my kind of book. So I definitely look forward to reading that when it comes out.
Thank you.
Donna, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's a brief touch on what you can do and your vast knowledge and wisdom. So I definitely recommend that people get The Bridge. It is an incredible book. Like I say, I'm working my way through it, and I literally am working my way through it. It's a very, very powerful book. So I suggest that anyone gets hold of that. If people, obviously the retreat's not running anymore, so we've got the book. But if someone was like the next step for them, they've read the book, they're really, they feel really empowered by it and it's helped them move. How else can they work with you? What else do you do with people other than offering the book? I'm assuming there are other things that people can do with you in order to help them on their journey.
Yeah, loads of things. So I mean, the best way is to go to my website, which is deepeningintolife.com, and look under events. But I run with Gabby, who's the co-founder of The Bridge. We run regular weekend workshops, which is like a mini bridge called the Grief Space. Okay. So it's a mini version of The Bridge, and it's 2 days, and we run that in West Sussex. And then I also run a regular workshop called Naked, which is for women, and it's not about getting your kit off, but it's about living without masks. Yeah. So that's just a very small group of 8 women working directly with me to process their blocks around living unencumbered by kind of fakeness or perfection or any of that nonsense. So, and then there's also this is why it's good to sign up for my newsletter, because I run regular pay what you can events, because many of my workshops, they're reflective of what I'm worth, but it's also not accessible for everyone financially. So I do both. I charge what I'm worth, because I know what I'm worth and how hard I work to support people in their own healing, alongside doing events, which is one of the events that I've met you at, which is a free event. And I do lots of things for free, or where you pay what you can. And sometimes that means bringing the biscuits, and that's all good. I've actually got, just so you know, Sam, I don't know when your podcast is coming out, but I've got one of those events is on Saturday, the 7th of January, just to kickstart the new year for people. And it's a pay what you can event called Circle of Grace in West Sussex. So that might be something.
This episode will be out next week, hot off the press. Okay. It's the last one before the year end. I thought we did it on a high. So yeah, it will be out next week. So anybody's interested in that, then they know. Sorry, deepeningintolife.com, is it?
Deepeningintolife.com, or you can follow me on Instagram at Donna Lancs, Lancs.
And those links will be in the show notes. Fantastic. Donna, we always end the podcast with a couple of really quick questions, a bit more personal, really quick fire. So here we go, if you're up for them.
I'll tell you if I'm not. I'm good at my boundaries.
Yeah, I know. What if you could only listen? This is my favorite question, by the way. If you could only listen to one song for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Oh, gosh. One song for the rest of my life. It would be Into My Arms by Nick Cave.
Oh, God, that's a deep song. Or for me, it is anyway. It is deep. One book that you recommend everybody should read, apart from your own.
One book that I mean, I'm not a great believer in shoulds, because books find us rather than the other way around. But a book that people could read that, crikey. I mean, I don't mean to sabotage your podcast, but it's such a big question because books are like perfume. It's so individual, that. So there's a book that I absolutely loved, and then I gave it to friends, and they were like, and it was like, seriously?
Yeah.
So this book was called Mermaid of the Black Conch. I think it won an award, various awards actually, and it's fiction. It's not like a personal development book, but seeing as you put me on the spot, because this book is about patriarchy, it's about feminism, it's about freedom, it's about witches, it's about shamanism. It's such a beautifully exquisite, powerful story. Mermaid of the Black Conch. Can't remember the author, but that would be, I mean, that book still, I think about it and I still am grieving that it's over.
Oh wow, that is definitely a powerful book when you're like,
I need to get out more.
there's not a follow-up. Well, I will leave it there, seeing as you found that one so hard.
No, it's not hard. It's like, it's like perfume. Like I say, people, one book I love, you might think it's a pile of toots. So yeah,
but it's interesting to get people's takes on, a book that's really impacted them. And you obviously, could have framed it maybe in a different way, but that book clearly had a big impact on you. So
it's I mean, that book just blew me away.
Fantastic. Well, Donna, like I said, it's been an absolute privilege having you on the podcast. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you giving up your time for little old Sam Adams. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome, Sam. So welcome.
Thank you.